One. Welcome to Noble Thoughts by Idiots. I'm your host, Captain Bagels. This is a show about friends who talk about board games, movies, video games, and frankly anything else we find entertaining. Always joined by my co-host and good friend, Ripper Goose. Prepare to have your mind, knowledge expanded or shrunk. How you doing today, Goose?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. I know you've been very waiting for me to finish watching episode 8 because it took me a while to get around to it, but I'm very glad I did.
Why don't we introduce the actual topic we'll be getting into today?
Sounds good. So today we're going to be reviewing The Mandalorian, episode 8, the final episode of season 1. Feeling very good on it. Let's do from the start. Hot take. Did you like it or did you hate it?
Well, get your little butt now.
Okay.
Episode was it was alright.
Really? Okay.
Pretty good.
No, okay.
It was actually amazing.
Okay. No, you had me going for a minute. I was like, really? You didn't like it? Okay. Yeah, it's gonna be a mark. Okay. Go ahead.
No, I think I posted this online as soon as I saw it, and I still agree with it, even watching it a couple of times since it's the episode and the series itself, but especially that episode is exactly what everybody who loves Star Wars, that's what I feel like everybody wanted. That's what everybody wants to see out of the universe that isn't dealing with Jedi and Skywalkers and all that nonsense. Like, when you just think about the Star Wars world and universe, that episode
Nailed it.
is it. It nails it.
Definitely. And I think from there, I am going to agree with pretty much everything you said. I think that was the embodiment of Star Wars. What I really loved about it was, like I've said in past episodes, it's gritty, it's real, there's dirt, there's grime, and a good amount of action, but a fun story that pulls you through the narrative. The narrative is interesting to kind of keep you on, and it's interesting to see these characters that you've always maybe heard in the expanded universe, the things that are quote-unquote not part of the fiction, but it's very cool to actually see them. What we're about to get into breaking down the episode as a whole, but the one thing I think they do a very good job about, and I'll mention when we get to it, is the lore. They don't actually show what happens on screen, but they make reference to, like, you remember, like when they're talking about the stormtrooper that is played by Gina Carano, or as Cara Dune.
The Rebel Trooper.
Yeah, the Rebel Trooper. But I love the knowledge that they made. They said, you know what this gun can do. You've seen your own troopers getting mowed down by them. And they're supposed to be very heavy, like powerful soldiers. And the fact that they got mowed down by such weaponry, that just little things that they do there.
There were so many things in this episode. Like, I mean, I love Star Wars personally. And I wouldn't say I'm like one of those hardcore nerds that knows about every single little detail in the universe. I grew up with the movies. I love watching them. I can't tell you how many times I've watched them. But there's so many things in this episode that just made me like fanboy, which I'd never ever do. But internally, it's like I'm screaming like a little girl when these things happen on the screen. I just can't wait to talk about it. I've been waiting for 4 days now?
Yeah.
4 days for you.
Yeah, I know. I was a little late to the party. So let's just jump right in. We're going to do with the opening scene is IG-11, once again voiced by Taika Waititi, and I probably pronounced that wrong, but he's a pretty famous director he's been part of the Thor Ragnarok director, and he was also Korg, if you remember that show. But IG-11, he comes to the quote-unquote the child or Baby Yoda's rescue from those scout troopers. What I thought was very fun, I thought this was an interesting, we all felt bad when Baby Yoda got punched. Not once, but twice. But did you know, when you were watching this scene, that there was a cameo of who the stormtroopers were, or the Bike Scout Troopers, I do put it.
I didn't know until I read it, but
And
I knew the one guy definitely sounded familiar.
yeah, I knew it. I knew it immediately when I heard the voice. It was like, "Yep, Jason Sudeikis." And once again, I probably pronounced that wrong. So we don't take ourselves seriously here, and we try our best. But I thought that was awesome because I was like, "Yeah, he's gonna die." And just a little framework of how they had, you see the bike scout troopers sitting there, and you see the foot kind of step down. And you're like, "Oh, yeah, it's about the wreck shop here," And it's always been very cool to see the IG-11. I knew they were gonna bring him back. Everybody did,
Oh yeah.
but I do like how they made him go like, don't hurt the child. But he was very polite first. He's like, "Are you going to give me the child?" And I love that it voided. He's like, "Well, I'm not a killer anymore, but if you touch that child again, I might have to be."
Well, at first when I was watching the episode, I didn't feel until IG showed up, I didn't feel like it fit in because especially towards the end of that scene when they're just trying to shoot at the can and they kept missing or whatever. I thought it was hilarious.
Oh yeah.
That seems awfully light for not that the series. Actually, I don't think their series really had any comedy up until that point.
They had levity. I mean, the Baby Yoda parts, of course. You know what I mean? All through. I do actually totally forgot when you mentioned the whole they can't shoot for crap. I thought that was pretty funny.
And the funny thing is, they're supposed to be the snipers of the Empire. It's scout troopers.
Yeah, that's true, isn't it? That is true. Oh man. So basically, going from there, IG-11 successfully. Well, they don't really heed to his orders about, hey, let the child go, and so they both get shot and killed. And I also thought it was funny that when they were doing the voice chatter back and forth between the other stormtroopers, they made reference to like, "Hey, we've got the child. What's taking so long?" Kind of thing. And they're like, "Well, he just killed the last stormtrooper that came through with him with nonsense." And he's like, "Good point. I thought that was funny. And he's like, standing by. So
I like the part too where he's like, we should feed it. We should check on him. See if it's okay.
I did like that he's like, "You just hit the thing, haven't checked it. If you go to Moff Gideon and show him a dead child, do you think you're gonna fare well?" I thought that was kind of funny. So that's where they went from IG-11 rescues the child, and once again, that was a sad point in the end of the last episode, where we see that Mick Nolte's character died, which was kind of like, that sucks. I was very sad to see, Cool as a Kuiil, Cool, I think that's his name, Nick Nolte's character day. And I'm like, I have spoken. He had some really good lines, and it was really sad to see him go. They don't really, they bury him, I think, at some point during this final episode.
Yeah, towards the end of the episode, he gets buried. I think I've heard other people say it, but I don't necessarily agree with it. They say, they're going in the Game of Thrones direction where they're not afraid to kill people off in this show, which I agree with, certainly. But I don't think this is going to be anywhere near Game of Thrones or anything in that respect.
And to be honest, I'm not a huge Game of Thrones fan, and I like the pacing of this. Because I know. What I'm saying is, I like this because this has got your serious tones, but it's got your light tones too, your fun moments. It's entertaining. The action's lighthearted. You don't have to the thing about Game of Thrones, it's like, oh, we want to kill people for the shock value. People die in this. Like, it was sucky to see that Nick Nolte character, Cool, die, but it was just upsetting when he, you're like, oh, but that was it. They didn't linger on it like Game of Thrones would do. So, and I'm fine with them pushing around characters. But basically, now that IG-11 took care of that, then they go back to where Gideon is basically warning Karga, Dune, and the Mandalorian that they face certain death unless they agree to assist him. And they thought the quote line that he had in there was pretty interesting, which was the, if you're asking me to trust you, you cannot. Just you betrayed my business agreement. I would gladly break my promise and watch you die at my hand. Like, I thought that was pretty. Like, I feel like the dialogue is very well in this show.
Oh yeah. First of all, he kept it. He kept it 100, as the kids say. It was straight up and told him, "I'll kill you if I feel like it.
Pretty
Just
much.
don't piss me off."
Well, I thought that, and that was very interesting. But this is also the point where we get to see them bring in the heavy Gauze cannon, as I guess you would say, which I thought was pretty cool because once again, this is where they make the mention that they don't show it doing anything, but they give you lore to it. On the site, you're like, even the Mandalorian and Gina or Cara Dune, the stormtrooper, they're you can see that they're like, we got to get out of here. Like, kind of, they know it's going to be bad. It's impending doom, and I thought that was very well done without showing it, because a lot of times showing it versus just kind of putting the lore there and showing like, oh, we had stormtroopers that died mid-air, that got vaporized, basically, you could say. That was really cool. So that's set up for that gun to come into play.
Oh yeah, I thought the whole Farvo, I can't say his name.
Jon Favreau? Jon Favreau.
The showrunners do very, very well in creating the tense environment. I'm not one that gets so involved in the TV shows or movies that I'm like sitting on the edge of my seat, or I'm like actually afraid of what's going to happen. But watching this, I started to actually feel anxious to a certain degree, especially when the Death Troopers came in after Kara.
Yes.
And it looked like I really thought they were actually gonna kill her, and they were gonna kill her off in the episode. But
oh yeah,
that definitely that was a surprise for me. And when you think about all this, and think that this is a Disney-owned property now and a Disney show essentially.
Yeah, a little dark. Yeah, I'd say.
I was really afraid of what they were going to do to Star Wars, and that actually gives me hope for stuff like Deadpool. I mean, that's completely off topic, but
Deadpool. Wait, I'm trying to follow on. Are they making
surprise? What's his face? Ryan Reynolds said he is working with Disney right now, and they're coming up with the third Deadpool movie.
Awesome. That's awesome.
First Marvel Deadpool too.
Yeah, that's great news to hear. I'm very happy to hear this. I didn't know this was going to be a thing. Yeah, so that's awesome. I'm very glad to hear that.
Yeah, so I got some hope.
Yeah. Okay, so basically the M61 Vulcan was a based blaster machine gun as seen in Chapter 1. And that's the gun that they're basically saying that this isn't going to end well for you. And it definitely does come into play when the Mandalorian seizes control of the machine gun after. Because if you notice when we go to the next part, after Gideon warns them, I do like, once again, this sense of like, you don't see it, but like IG-11 is coming on his storm bike, I guess I'd say. And he arrives and he's shooting down people. And I like that there's the visual where you see all the stormtroopers swing to the left and start to look in that direction. Mm-hmm. And you see IG-11 just gunning down, throwing grenades, and wrecking shop, pretty much.
And my favorite part of that, I'm sure, along with everybody else, is the happy carnage smile that Baby Yoda has.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that, to be honest. I just like, yay! It's like such a little thing, but it's like, yeah, no.
Apparently he likes when people die.
Yeah. Yeah. That I think if you think about it, that baby is a little messed up, I think. Maybe just a little bit.
It's 50.
You live that long and you're a child. I don't know. But in this when IG breaks up the fight, this gives Karga, Dune, and the Mandalorian time to break out, and a good gunfight ensues. And I think it's a very good action scene for a final episode. This has already got an awesome scene with IG-11 and all of the Mandalorian and his allies with him fighting. And this is where we see that the Mandalorian gets hit and is supposedly mortally wounded, as it would say. Yes. And I'm pretty sure the one that did the hit on him was Moff Gideon. Was that correct?
Yes, he shoots the gun, the Gatling gun's power supply, which causes a huge explosion, knocks everybody in the area off their feet, and slams the Mandalorian down. And then, obviously, he has trouble getting up, and they try to rescue him.
Gotcha. And pretty much, and I thought was funny was that IG-11 shows up to break them out, to basically like break the standoff and help out in the situation. And they end up going back, I'm pretty sure, in the same damn building they just tried to break out, which I was like, okay, maybe a different building, but, you know, it happens. So, but I do like at this point, the IG-11 is shown to be kind of a multi-personal tool, that it's not just a weapon, it also has like a blowtorch that it can cut open the thing. And I did like the little nod that IG-11 talks to Carl Weathers' character, Grief Karga, and says, if you step next to the child, I will kill you, or something. I'll have to kill you.
Oh, I loved him before that too, the entire time with his character just taking shots while Moff Gideon's talking to him.
Yeah. Yeah, so as this is going on, IG-11's welding the door shut, and the Mandalorian's saying, they're saying, oh, we can help you. It's like, no, I'm dead, basically. And I know they're doing it for dramatic effect, but, he's saying he won't remove his helmet due to Mandalorian lore and honor, that nobody can see his face. I did like the workaround, is that they sent away, said, hey, and the Mandalorian wasn't planning on making it, of course, but I did like that they used this time to say that the IG-11, he looked at him and goes, well, good thing I'm not alive. You know what I mean? And then that's how and that was also the point where IG-11 kind of, I guess you would say, redeems himself with the Mandalorian. And that the Mandalorian won't admit it, but he kind of is starting to have, I guess, camaraderie with IG-11. You know what I mean? It doesn't want to lose him later in the show, as that does happen. But this is also a point where you called it, the Black Stormtroopers were the Death Squad.
Death Troopers.
Yeah, Death Troopers, which is reminiscent of Nazis, and that's kind of pretty dark. And he does come to use the flamethrower on Baby Yoda.
Oh, that wasn't a Death Trooper. That was just a
flame trooper?
Yeah, something like that.
Gotcha.
I don't know the exact name for it.
But the child does use the Force to deflect the attack and turn the other flame trooper, just puts it back on and makes him a little crispy.
I gotta tell you, that was one of those moments when I saw the flame trooper come out where I was like, oh yeah, this is awesome. It was one of those.
Oh yeah.
You always hear about it, like you never see anything about it, and there's tons of things that happen in the episode. Like you always hear about, like especially they made toys of these things, and you never actually saw it in the movies. Like the troop carrier in the beginning of the episode.
Yes.
That was a toy. You never saw it in the movies, or if you did, it was.
It's very brief, very brief, and that's what. This is also what I will say for the entire season. I think every episode moved. I don't think any episode was boring. They all had excellent content. The visuals are amazing. From the music score, which I thought is iconic now. And it just came out this year, but you already hear that noise and you know it to be the Mandalorian. The visual presentation of the worlds they chose, and the weaponry and the grit of all the armor designs is very well done. They will say that while IG-11 removes the helmet to administer Bacta to the head of the Mandalorian, and that, as far as we know, should take the issue to heal
he healed up. I saw some people in their reviews were having issue with how fast he was healing, this, that, and the other thing. It's just like, what bothers me most about a lot of Star Wars fans,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll keep it 100. Um, I dislike very greatly how critical everybody is of Star Wars universe versus real life versus just being too into Star Wars universe. Uh, I guess it just annoys me where they say, "Oh, well, the Bacta spray healed him almost instantly. You wouldn't heal like a normal person wouldn't heal like that. It's not normal. It's a Star Wars universe.
Well, yeah, and also they mentioned that Bacta
They've
calls
used
it.
it in all the movies.
Well, they have, and also it very specifically says that Bacta causes mutilated flesh to regenerate in the Star Wars universe. So it combined bacterial medium plus a fluid that I'm sure IG-11 had some, regenerates traumatized flesh and promotes tissue growth. So you're not gonna have like that is lore in that universe. So that's not out of the question and totally believable. As far as they make in what believable is in the world of the Mandalorian and Star
Yeah,
Wars.
exactly. I don't know. Sorry, but that was my rant. I just get annoyed at all the people. Like, I haven't seen Rise of Skywalker yet. I hopefully will soon. But just watching people go off about that, it's a movie, people. I mean, unless it's absolutely absurd, it makes no sense within the Star Wars universe, which you don't know because really we don't have that much to go off of. I mean, I guess there's the books that are considered canon, but come on,
Well,
give me a break.
another thing that at least my wife and I would like to do when we watch the show, and because the framework of how they do these episodes, I always love that they do obviously get the intro song and they show what the concept's going to be for this episode. At the very end, they always show the concept art, which even makes the credits enjoyable to watch. And so we like to play while we're watching the show to go, concept art. Like you try and see what the scene they're doing in there is going to be a concept art piece in the end. And one part that I thought was real unfortunate, I'll put it this way, was when he's joining with the others, the Mandalorian, he finds the covert group of the Mandalorians dead, like all their helmets piled. And I was like, that kind of was a gut punch. You know what I mean?
Yeah. At first, I didn't know what that was exactly until I put two and two together. Oh, those are the people that came to save him. Got it.
That actually was like, oh, that was because that had that heavy machine gunner Mandalorian who had the cool, and I was like, man, and for all we know, he could still be alive, but at the same time, and I know the armor had to stay back because she wanted to reclaim all the armor, and it's kind of an honor code and a religious thing for them on their armor, but it was just an unfortunate event because they're like, yeah, and basically they say that the Imperials came back in force and basically shot him that they couldn't fight back enough in time or something along those lines. So it kind of gives you an idea of how powerful the Empire is still, even though they're in the remnants after Return of the Jedi, because this
I didn't actually think about that, but thinking about it now, it is. You do see, I guess, that there are still strong pockets of whatever remains of the Empire.
And my understanding is that I was looking up, they said that the Mandalorian takes place 5 years after Return of the Jedi and 25 years prior to The Force Awakens.
Yeah, and that brings up another point, because in an earlier episode, I forget who said it, but someone did say that the stormtroopers will support whoever pays them. So
they're like guns for hire. They're like mercenaries.
Right. So I don't know at this point if Goff Midian is just... Obviously, he was a part of the Empire, but I don't think he's actually functioning as a part of the Empire at this point. I mean, obviously, we're not exactly sure. It looks like he is. Or if he's just kind of become this warlord. essentially.
Yeah, I'd like to know who, and they do reveal something at the very end of the episodes. I was gonna read to you. I thought was interesting, but we'll save that for the end.
Yeah, and
Uh,
here next, after we find all the armor, we come across probably one of the top scenes in the episode, and if not the season.
yes, that was what the armor does to those
The
troopers.
armor fight. Yep.
Yeah, and this is also a concept art scene. When like you look and you see the concept art, and you look at that she's surrounded by the people, and she's got the hammer and thing, and I was like, yeah, that's concept art. I called it. Like, so anytime you go and watch the show, do yourself a favor, see if you can spot the concept art spots, because they do a really good job. But like, this was a scene where, okay, so what made this fight so visceral was that you've never seen Stormtrooper shatter.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And that little touch, like, here's the thing: if you do that same scene and she does all the punches and the hits with her armor, but nothing breaks, it's just like, hey, they're knocked out. It wouldn't have the same visual, viciousness to it. But the fact that like she smashed and it was in bits and pieces, that made it feel more personal, such as that she was probably not happy they killed her fellow Mandalorians.
Oh, for sure. To me, like it was like the Batman versus Superman movie. Like the one good part of that movie, the Batman fight at the end of the warehouse, where you see like Ben Affleck just like snapping the henchman's like
Yeah.
arms and stuff, because you saw a couple. She broke a couple of stormtroopers' arms, and she threw the one into the.
In the
fire pit.
oh my god, yeah, that's a bad way to go. I think, like, yeah, that just melted, not even there.
Oh, we're forgetting another big scene. That whole segment, the middle part of that episode is huge, because he gets his Mando gets his jetpack.
That's true. Just like in the video games, upgrade unlocked. Like that's
live action RPG.
It is live action RPG, because in the first second episode, he's like, I've got this rare metal. What can you make it? And he gets a super weapon. He gets the needle rockets out of his arm. You know what I mean? Like in his gauntlet. So I gotta say, yeah, every time it feels like he's getting more and more powerful upgrades. Now he's got allies such as IG-11 and so forth. So after that spectacular fight with the Mandalorian armor, the group goes down and gets ferried to an underground lava river, which is also a concept art, which is pretty badass. And this is where you see when they are ambushed by stormtroopers.
Okay,
shortly before that. Go ahead.
We gotta talk about the R2 with the legs and the arms.
That was weird, right? I mean, you never see an R2-D2 unit with legs.
That for me, that was one of the things in the episode. And obviously, I loved all the main points, but like, it's just little things like that where I'm like, holy shit, you're right. You've never seen an R2 with legs or arms, but it's completely possible, because you can tell R2-D2's arms are just kind of bolted on there.
But it was almost scary.
Oh yeah,
it was always like it has legs, it can walk. Wait, and I did like that that Cara Dune, the stormtrooper, she's like, stop.
She's not a
stormtrooper. What is she again?
A rebel shock trooper.
Shock trooper. Yeah. Shock trooper. Yeah, but I do like that she's like, stop, and just shoots its head off, and it's like, okay, that'll do it. So. So the visuals, once again, and just like, that's the other thing that this show has done so much, is that they put just a small thing, legs, on a robot, especially an R2-D2 similar looking robot, and it made your brain go like, why have they never done that before?
Well, and if you want to take the realism argument into play here, it's like, of course these people would do that. Like, it seems like obviously you could just mix and match droid parts. It's like, why wouldn't they put legs and arms on an R2 unit? That makes so much sense.
Of course. Yeah, so that was a very cool revelation. And this is the point where we get the Mandalorian starts to have, I'd say, camaraderie with the IG-11, saying, because IG-11 wants to go and self-detonate, to sacrifice himself to take out the ambush of stormtroopers at the end in the lava tunnel. And I actually really was liking IG-11. Like, I'm like, this sucks. They're going to kill IG-11. Like, I knew they were going to do it.
I thought he was awesome in the first episode in that firefight.
Yeah, no,
obviously he's been like they're just fleshing out characters extremely well.
And that there was an arc there, like he was a killer in the first episode, middle, like couple episodes, he's turned to a nanny, and I like that. If you remember, there was kind of a little short where he had to learn to walk again. It was kind of like a child's kind of thing, which I thought, and killed a couple rats by accident by dropping the crates on him. That was funny. So, and to see where like he's now the protector of the child, but to also see, you know, the Mandalorian character, his arc is that, well, he went from hating droids, nothing new, and now he doesn't want this droid who, you know, before he like, yeah, go kill yourself, I don't care, but now he doesn't want to like lose him. So I thought that was really interesting.
You saw him personally grow.
Yeah, pretty much, and that's where it happens. IG-11 does walk out there, and he said something along the lines, "Don't cry for me. You know, good news, I was never alive." Basically, walks out there and detonates. Very well done. Once again, that's definitely a concept art shot. You see IG-11 in the water, in the lava river. Very interesting.
And then we get to the big finale. Oh, wait, before we do that, after obviously IG just self-destructs and takes out whatever there was, like 30 stormtroopers, we get to the part where the boat's slowly coming out of the lava river tunnel, and then what do you see in the horizon? TIE fighter.
Yes.
And obviously in the movies, TIE fighters are just seen as, well, before The Force Awakens, TIE fighters are just seen as like, you know, these little tiny ships that are just fodder to blow up, essentially. They're useless.
Yeah.
Well, obviously in The Force Awakens, we see how, you know,
how formidable they can be. Like, they're formidable. That's what I love, is like, yeah, just like in Halo where you see a grunt and you're like, that's nothing, but in reality, grunts are bigger than people, average sized people. So it's the same deal, where they take
it puts a lot of context into what you're actually, you know, dealing with.
Yeah, in perspective, because you're like, oh, that's not good. Like, oh, it's not like, oh, just shoot it down. It's like, with what? And this is also part of the video game-ness that I love personally, is that like you have that concept art where he gets the jetpack. You know what I mean? Now we're like, okay, you now have this new upgrade. Now you must do a boss fight. The boss fight is the TIE fighter.
The best part, the funniest part of the episode, when you see the TIE fighter come in and start shooting at him, Carl Weathers' character, Grief, he's telling Baby Yoda to do the hand thing, and he's waving his hand.
Yeah, that was like, that was pretty good. Do the hand thing, and Baby Yoda's like, just waves at him. It's like, oh, okay, all right, yep. That was awesome.
Again, he's smiling during a murder moment.
But I think that child's gonna be a little darker when he grows up. He or she, I can't really tell. We don't know the gender of such a child. So, Gideon attacks in the TIE fighter, and this is a great demonstration. Like, we already had in one episode, several like not fantastic gunfights, and now we're ending with a TIE fighter fight, and it shows the how, like we said, formidable those TIE fighters can be. And I like that he used this grappling hook, and he started to use all his like gadgets basically in order to truly become a better, Mandalorian, I guess you'd say, because he uses grappling hook to approach the aircraft. He then uses his he had some thermal detonators. I guess those were thermal detonators, right?
Some kind of explosives, yeah.
Yeah, that he had on space. And then when he's able to do that, you're like, okay, so this Moff Gideon guy is about to go down. We shouldn't have to worry about it. And of course, devils never die, and also you get a cool, like, you can see a cool crash site, you know what I mean, when it happens, and you get to see him, the Mandalorian, learn how to, because he's pretty high up at that point, uses the jets in order to stop himself, from crushing his legs effectively. I honestly thought they were gonna see him do all that really badass stuff on the TIE fighter and then come down and just like kind of faceplant, but they did not choose to do
I
that.
wouldn't have been surprised.
Yeah.
I guess I would have taken away from the moment.
Yeah, pretty much. But after that, we're like, the fight's over. But this is where we get to see the Devils Never Die part. And this is where we get that Moff Gideon cuts himself out of the plane with a very particular looking, what one would say, lightsaber. So this is what I thought was really cool. So why this is really cool is because that lightsaber, or the dark saber as it's actually known, was the first Mandalorian to ever join the Jedi Order. That's why this is a big deal. So that is a lightsaber, in fact, but it's the dark saber, and so the Mandalorians took it as pride that this was the first one to actually ever join a Jedi Order, and his name was Tara Vizsla, and I think they do mention him in the Clone Wars. You may actually see him, but he was years before anything we'd seen in the canon. It's kind of a black bladed saber.
Oh, he's in Rebels.
Yeah.
The sword's in Rebels too.
Yeah. So what's badass is like, the song was the blade was protected by the Jedi until a group of his ancestors challenged the Jedi and liberated the blade, I could say. And then from that point on, that blade, or the dark saber is what we're talking about, has gone from the hands of Darth Maul. Darth Maul stole it, and fun fact, Darth Maul didn't die in episode 1. He has a full story after that. And then after that, it went to, there was several people that have been from heroes and villains that we've seen that saber's hands in. But that really does, it's a cool, like, that's why this Mandalorian show, I feel personally, has been so successful, is that you have all these different nods. Like, you're like, oh, that's a cool looking blade, whatever. But that's actually, there's a lot more story behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just, well, like everybody else who watched the episode, I'm just extremely curious as to how he got it, where it's going, what they're doing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Completely.
It's one of those things where season 2 it can't come fast enough, and we have to wait a year.
What?
But I guess that's the way it is.
So basically, we could say some fun facts, little things, is that it was filmed in October 2018 in Southern California. But what I thought was personally pretty cool is that they actually did send film crews out to Iceland and Chile for like background shots and inspiration shots. And they took live, real, genuine photos, but they used Unreal 4, the game engine, which is not typically, they're used for games, as it would say, but they don't typically use it on movies. But they did in this case, or a TV show. And with that use of the Unreal game engine, they actually used it for normally they do storyboards. They have like white, it's a wall and you write handwritten little concept art or maybe printed. They used the storyboard in the Unreal 4 engine piece software so that they could quickly and accurately and make such a visual change. So what they did is they took the Iceland photos, the real photos, and threw it in Unreal. That's where they were able to make all these locations in the world.
Like around that the speeder bikes were going over.
Yeah, and that
volcanic.
Well, what's cool is they actually had a giant wall, like of monitors, to make it seem like one giant display, and then they took the Unreal 4 game engine plus the photos they took, put them together, and they put that in the background. So they were on a sound stage, the actors, but they were in front of a giant HD screen, so that they could. So they brought the actual environment to the actors instead of the actor to the environment.
So I wonder if that goes, or if we're going to end up seeing that a lot more, because, I mean, to me that just screams that they're doing that for budget reasons. Obviously, I'm assuming it's cheaper, other than doing full CGI.
But it looks amazing.
Yeah,
like it's very well. Yeah, it's very well done, and they actually Industrial Light and Magic, the guys that do all the Star Wars movies, they made a specific studio that is solely for for stream-based content, aka Disney Plus.
That's that Disney money.
So they are going to be making many more Star Wars concepts. But if this is the caliber of what they are going to bring for future first-party titles on or shows on Disney Plus, then I think they've knocked it out of the park. And I'm more excited for all the Marvel spinoffs, because if this is the money they put into a Star Wars, and I feel the Marvel personally, as of late, has had a better success with Endgame and Infinity War, how
right
well they
now,
did.
Yeah, I think Marvel has it's like the it thing now, where Star Wars is a lot of the younger people, they know what Star Wars is, but it's not that big of a deal. Whereas Marvel is, I guess, the new Star Wars for younger people, essentially.
Well, I think so. Nice. So what I think right there is we've gone through the entire show, or episode 8. I think it was another successful show. And remember, do you have anything you want to say before we part ways on this?
Well, let's just get a quick, I guess. Let's do a quick season rating, obviously, because we both approved the episode.
Yes.
So overall, what would you give on a scale of 1 to 10? Make it easy.
1 to 10. Eventually, we'll change our scale system, but for the time being, I knew we were going to do I would just, because the 1 to 10 seems very vague to me, I'm just going to say I love it. That's a buy it. It's a buy it. You know what I mean? We'll come up with our system, but rent it, buy it, kill it with fire. That's what we can do. So I'm gonna say I loved it.
Yeah, in that case, I would say that it's well worth buying Disney Plus alone and having it.
Oh yeah.
Will Disney Plus be worth having for anything else right now? I don't know, unless if you're a big Disney fan, sure. But if if you're looking for more stuff like Mandalorian, personally, for me, get it, watch it, cancel it until something else comes out and get it again.
Definitely. So, any other words before we end this show?
Nope, I think we're pretty good.
All right, now remember, you're only an idiot if you sleep in the water face down. Thanks for listening. Have a good night.
See you next week.
Bye.